Everybody, so thank you very much. Panelists, participants, my name is Keith Fidel. I work with New Noise. I also work with a local company called RightScale. We've got some customers I'd like to see on this panel, which is really nice. I want to introduce you all to Jacques Cabra. He's going to be moderating the panel for us. Jacques is, he's got a lot of ways I can describe you. Top 40 under 40. Most handsome man in Santa Barbara, maybe part of it.
Thank you, Keith.
So we're really happy to have him. We've got a great partner in Spark Interactive who's doing this as a live stream. We'll all cache this content for further use. But it's an interesting topic. This is what it takes to be a startup in this freaking crazy market. So I think it's going to be interesting discussion. Let me let you introduce everybody.
Thanks a lot, Keith, and thanks again for having me back. This is my third year of the 3 years that New Noise has been around. I was very fortunate to introduce Tim Westergren 3 years ago, kick things off, and New Noise continues to evolve. But what I've said the last 3 years, what I'll say again, this is very much in its infancy, and what you guys do after the 3 days, after the experience, is very relevant. Talk about your experiences, share the conference with others, people that you've met, things you learned, things you disagreed with, whatever it might be. We want to see New Noise continue to thrive and grow. So welcome, 2011 Santa Barbara New Noise Festival. And on behalf of the entire panel, we're stoked to have your presence and your interest in funding and asking the question of how you can tap into the more than $440 million out there set aside for music funding, whether you're an artist or you're an entrepreneur in the technology field that might serve the music industry. What we're going to do is introduce the panelists, and then they're going to each spend a minute or two talking a little further about their background and their reason that they're here, and then we're going to kick off with a few questions to get the dialogue going. Please do save your questions, and we're going to hopefully address all the questions. We have a small enough group to do so. But the first few minutes of today's panel is about getting to know the panelists and observing kind of what, from their point of view, what the important areas and dialogue areas need to be in this subject. So, without further ado, to my immediate right is Vicky Nauman. Vicky leads the U.S. business for 7 Digital, a London-based platform that licenses music from all the majors and indie labels in Europe and North America. And what they do is they license their platform to enterprise-level companies like Hewlett-Packard, RIM, and Samsung. But they really like the startups, and they have to connect with the startups because they're the ones focused on innovation, new products, and they use the API between the two very elegantly. And 7 Digital actually partners with Audiovroom, and one of the co-founders of Audiovroom is, Sam, excuse me, and she's got 2 names, Sam and Sanem. And so there's a real partnership already up here at the panel, which is something we should definitely discuss. And what Vicky's looking for when she talks to the entrepreneurs is she's looking for companies that are focused on building really meaningful and usable UI systems in their products, user interface systems. And they have an understanding of music rights, this is extremely important, and are aware of the cost and the complexity of digital music. Okay? To Vicky's right is Nan Ma. Nan left Google, and along with another Googler, he got funding from Great Oaks VC and Jeff Fleur, founder and CEO of StubHub, and basically started their own company called Rolling.fm. And they're really focused on real-time or live web. And as Nan will explain to you, he saw a big void with music and social discovery. And in that context, he put it out there, built a company, and so far it's been validated. Nan's from Los Angeles, but he currently lives in New York City. Welcome. And Sam, excuse me for not saying Sam anyway, she's been around for a long time. In her 14 years, she's been instrumental in launching 12 hedge funds. And she's led the 3 fund platforms on her own, over $5 billion of combined investor assets. And she's generated tens of millions of dollars of revenue within short periods of time through these funds. Most recently, Sam has formed Social Genius, which is really fascinating stuff. And she earned her MBA from NYU. Welcome. To Sam's right is Jeffrey Sass. He's been in the startup field for quite some time, co-founding several businesses and raising $40 million in one instance for Barpoint.com. Today he's the chief evangelist of a company called Mixer. It's one of the top 15 mobile websites in the US with around 15 million uniques every month. and now they're entering the music field, the streaming music field, and offering some pretty unique features. And lastly, we just got added another local entrepreneur, Seth Epstein, and he's the CEO of Social Stay. It's a mobile platform targeted at hospitality and events. Actually, the Canary is one of the clients, right? And Social Stay built the app for this conference. He founded Fuel, a pioneer in motion graphics, which was acquired by Razorfish. So let's welcome the panelists. So if you guys could each take a couple minutes and talk further about your backgrounds and what brought you here.
Well, it's great. I worked for Sonos here so I lived in Santa Barbara for 2.5 years, and I've really done, all bits and pieces of the music space, from radio to live events to I worked on one of the first legal downloadable music products at Real Networks, done consulting and music licensing in China and Europe, and worked at consumer electronics, and now really focusing on this platform approach. And it's great to be here. And we like to work with up-and-coming artists, up-and-coming startups, as well as the big enterprise-level companies.
All right. It's great being here. I'm Nan, and so just a little background on myself. So I was at Google for about 4.5 years, and for me, it was tough working in a sort of a corporate environment, right? We saw things that we could have done in the internet space, and particularly this void that Jacques just mentioned in kind of music discovery combined with social discovery. And so with me and my buddy who was at Google, was a fellow engineer, we essentially locked down our Series A seed round and quit Google to start Rolling.fm. We launched that about 3 months ago, and essentially what it is, it's a platform to find new music that's socially curated, right? So you're in this kind of room where you get to place tracks for your friends in real time. Your friends and people are kind of represented via avatars. And so there's 3 different ways, right? You can DJ in sort of a dance hall, a video streaming room where you get to DJ but also see yourself and video stream anything that you want. And we also have a bathroom in which people could also kind of have these type of meetups where people get to tag up the walls, right? So we get more kind of engagement into these environments. So for us, we see the next evolution of kind of digital technology moving more towards this kind of real-time, alive web. Music being the commonality that brings people together so that they can actually meet.
Thank you. Sam?
My service is called Audioverm. It's brand new, about 3 weeks old actually, on Facebook if you go today and look. But essentially my 2 partners and I basically had a problem discovering music. We really liked finding out about music from our friends, and we really wanted to share our preferences and just couldn't. And one of my partners is a technologist who had a great idea, and the other one is a music analytics PhD, believe it or not, who really knew how to add to the code. And so essentially I brought my business experience, those 2 brought their tech experiences, and we came up with Audioverm, which essentially is the first mobile music service that went live on Facebook's new mobile platform 3 weeks ago, and allows us to create a personalized social music environment. So you could, without having to be in front of a computer, just using your mobile phones, create a music experience on the spot with whoever's in the room. So all preferences coming together to come up with one common station, if you will, a radio station. And so everybody's preferences are really driving the music. It's not about us having to know the artist names or having spreadsheet access. So that kind of a product really appealed to us as individuals. We really wanted to work on it. It's been a passion project, and we're finding a lot of people are interested in it. So it's been a great ride so far.
Thanks, Sam. Jeff?
So my background has been both in the entertainment and technology industries, and for the last 12 years I've been in the mobile industry, so I have a lot of experience and background in mobile in particular. And Mixer, as Jacques mentioned, is one of the top 15 mobile websites, and we've had a very big download business, downloading of mobile entertainment content, music, ringtones, wallpaper images, and we've seen that grow. And for us, a logical next step, a logical progression would be to get into the streaming music business as well. And we're about to launch Mixer Social Radio, and the angle we approach it at is that music is something that is best enjoyed when you're listening together with your friends. So we'll require a Facebook login, and when you log into the service, we actually pull your Facebook community into Mixer Social Radio so you can see exactly what your friends are listening to, enter the rooms with them, listen together in real time, chat with them in real time, and we have a neat feature called Song Stories where you could literally tag a song with a short video of what that song means to you. You know, this was my wedding song and now I hate hearing it because we're divorced, you know, and put that video up and tag it to the song, and now anyone else who hears that song can watch all the song stories that are attached to the song, and those could be from the artists themselves too. So we're excited about it, and it's launching across multiple platforms, iOS, Android, and the desktop web, and that's been a technical challenge, but we're excited about it.
Right on. And Seth?
So name is Seth Epstein. I built a company in Los Angeles called Fuel, which was one of the top motion design shops. Was acquired by a digital company, so I went from television to the digital world. And I have a company now called Social Stay, which is headquartered here. And Social Stay provides a mobile platform targeted at hospitality, but we've been doing a lot of apps for events, and we've just did an app for a DJ and a boxer, and we're getting incredible downloads, and so it's surprised us a bit. And then we're launching, much similar to everybody else, we're testing in this hotel a text to front desk tool. So you're able to just text with the hotel anything you need. And so we're going to be rolling that out on a much larger scale. But literally, I'd love if you guys messed around with it while you're here. Just text the front desk, ask them something, put them to the test.
I'm hungry.
No, literally, please, let's see what they say. But we're really excited about that. It's a very elegant, simple solution, and we've got some really amazing interest from large organizations who want to roll it out. So we're excited about that, and my expertise is just raising capital, more garage capital. So you got an idea and you got to raise capital, and I have not raised VC, but I've only raised friends, family, and angel. So that's kind of my little area of expertise.
And Seth, what was your first concert that you ever attended?
My first concert was, I think it was Elvis Costello.
All right.
Yeah.
Jeff?
So I'm going to date myself, but actually my first concert was seeing Billy Joel at the Bottom Line, and I was 16, and we got in with fake IDs, and they served us booze, and it was, I'm here, and Billy Joel was like right where you're sitting, so it was pretty amazing.
And Sam?
I had a very different experience. I grew up in Istanbul, and it has one of the best music festivals. But you get to watch and hear anybody from a jazz artist to an opera singer. So I ended up seeing an entire bunch of shows. So
right.
That's the first one.
None?
So my first concert, this is when hip-hop was at its height. I saw Raekwon from the Wu-Tang Clan play at the Whiskey out in L.A. on Sunset.
Yeah.
Great times.
Cool. And Vicky?
Talking Heads.
Oh, right on. This must be the place. And mine was Black Sheep opening for TLC, Michigan. So, come a long way. Well, let's get into it. One of the things that is probably on some of your minds and the audience's minds is, okay, I've got a product, I've got an idea, maybe my product is my music, maybe I've got a mobile app, maybe I've got an actual new technology, a new way that people can share music, use music. How do I differentiate myself? And with all due respect to New Noise, is how do I rise above the noise? So I'd like to pose that question and get anybody's input. What is the differentiator? How do you really rise above?
Well, I mean, for our business, people come to us with that exact dilemma, and they don't want to go to the labels, or they don't want to have to ingest and figure out how to actually serve music. So we have all the rights, and we have the technology, and we license that out to people. And it's actually really important because music is almost, having that catalog is critical, but that's an expectation now. And so that is almost a commodity, that you can get a catalog from a number of different sources, but then what you do with it is really on the UI layer. What is that experience? How easy is it? How engaging is it? Can you pick up an app or look at a website and figure it out in 5 seconds? Because consumers are very fickle, so you've got to really get the UI and the user experience down first.
To add to that, I mean, UI is extremely important, but I think primary is certainly value proposition. Figure out what the value proposition in your product is. What is it actually solving, right? To the user, to the artist, to whoever your users are. Once you have that down, the key is ultimately going to be distribution. You talk about rise above the noise. There's a lot of noise out there, a lot of startups, a lot of VC money chasing startups, but you need a plan to get it out to people, and that's key.
Okay,
If
so
I could
so far we
actually,
have a UI, value proposition, and the plan.
I was just going to say, I mean, I think the execution part has to be there. It's not just the idea. It's
Yeah.
not just your vision. It really has to be the right team and the right execution plan, and you need to be able to do it very quickly. So those of us who end up being efficient and effective at how we kind of think about the world end up rising to the top.
And in the music space in particular, there's so many services now, so many different apps. It's important to try to find that one thing that becomes your signature feature or signature function that you're going to do really well, and try to own that piece, so that even though you might have similar functionality to other services, you've got this one thing that you're going to own and do really great. So like when we set out to do Mixer Social Radio, we decidedly said, group listening and song stories, those are the two things that we really want to do fantastic, have the best group listening experience, something that is different from everyone else, yet there are other similarities. So you got to find that one thing. And as everyone said, at the end of the day, execution and the user experience is everything. People are very fickle. There's a lot of choices. If you don't hit them with something that's simple, easy to understand, and works, you're not going to succeed.
And it is. I mean, music has now come into a place where it's a high complexity, low margin business. And any MBA program in the world will tell you don't want to get into a high complexity, low margin business. If it's high complexity, you want it to be high margin. If it's low margin, you want it to be as scalable as possible. And so, where do you reduce the complexity and reduce the churn that happens with labels and technology and streaming infrastructure and platforms, and really focus on cut through all of that to really focus on that core experience that you want to address.
Seth, adding to the question that's been answered so far, is the day of the entrepreneur, the sole entrepreneur, having a great concept, access to the internet, being able to build a business in this industry, is it dead? Do you have to have a team? Do you have to have a business plan? Do you have to have some startup? What's really the option for the entrepreneur?
Yeah, I would say from my perspective, now is probably the best time to start a company there's really ever been, for those exact reasons, is because you can do it so lean. And I think that from my perspective and the experience I've had over the last year in particular is that the way I look at it is, you got to figure out, are you selling an aspirin or are you selling a vitamin? A vitamin makes you feel good, but you're not going to stick with it, and you're not going to run to the cabinet when you really have a problem. But if your product has an element that's like an aspirin, like you got a headache, you do crazy shit to find an aspirin. You're like, that's what you want to have in your product. And that's something for us, being very blunt, we realized we were selling vitamins. And so what we did is we realized, hey, our customers were saying, hey, it's nice. And that you're basically throwing cotton balls trying to knock shit over. So, if you want to differentiate, you got to find, to everybody's point here, you call it your value proposition, call it your aspirin, call it your differentiator, whatever you want to call it. But, it's true, to stand out, you're going to have to move some mass pretty quickly. Right? So you got to find out what your aspirin is. That's been our insight over the last year, and something we're right in the middle of transforming with this new product.
I was just going to add, I mean, it's very interesting. I would have thought that a complex business like music would require a lot of people on our end, as a company to succeed. But actually, with a very lean team that has a good vision and, like I said, a good execution capability, you could really achieve quite a lot. There are great service providers. I mean, we work with, 7 Digital, we work with RightScale. I mean, between streaming from the cloud to, having content that's managed and licensed by somebody else, and you could really get into business fairly quickly. I think your edge is going to be in understanding where you really will have to add value, and we keep talking about that. In our case, it's also partly UI. It's really the user experience. We are creating an algorithm for the user. We're figuring out what their preferences are. If we do that part well, and we outsource everything else to the other service providers, we're lean, we're mean. We really get a lot done with just 3 people.
It's crazy because like 3 to 5 years ago, there wasn't any kind of third-party services where you can actually get all this type of music, right? So like now, starting a music startup, you can actually do that partner, with third-party partners to get all that content. The key is like how can you innovate on top of that, right? Because the economics is definitely, it's tough, right? The business, you're always going to be 60-70% content acquisition costs in general, right? That's Pandora's. You can negotiate these deals directly with the labels, but that's $4 or $5 million up front. So you got to figure out another layer on top of that where you can add that value and monetize on that. But music, I mean, everyone loves music. So.
Actually, that's a great example. I just have to add one thing. We're very similar in terms of artist queries. That part of our business is very similar to Pandora. They have 900,000 songs. We have access to 15 million.
Yeah.
And I could tap
Yeah.
into everything from not just artist and genre, but everything from beat, tempo of the song to what people are saying about the artist on the web. I mean, that kind of granular data I could get from Econest. I can tap into the 15 million song library from 7 Digital. Pandora has to do that in-house. I mean, it takes them 20 minutes to tap into the algorithm, for one song.
So
Imagine
your
the
value
scale
proposition is the integration of all these different sources.
And the user profiling. So we get to know the users. We tag every user based on the input we receive from them. It could be some data they've entered on Facebook. It could be whatever they've listened to on their phones. So we'll tap into all that to create a profile, then tap into available service providers to get whatever we need.
Because
And it's an
really-
amazing system.
And
Yeah.
it's amazing because, we have 15 million songs. I think we actually just passed 16 million. And it's become an expectation to have this huge, huge catalog. But the average consumer who loves music, even an avid music lover, might need 1,000 songs, maybe 5,000 songs that really resonate. And so how do you mine this massive amount of unwieldeliness in the music space and rise, within an application, get those songs to rise that work for you? And all these companies, are really taking a slightly different approach at that, but it is around curation, and it's around getting to know what a single music consumer wants that's different from what that music consumer wants, and delivering that.
Yeah, well, to your point, I mean, the catalog itself, in some respects, has been commoditized in that it's expected that a streaming radio service is going to have access, except for Pandora, because they've got their special sauce with the Music Genome Project. But everyone else is going to have, millions of titles. It's generally expected. And to your point, you don't really need millions of titles. There's only a few thousand that really matter to people for the most part. So then the key is, what are you going to do with that commodity to make it special? What are you going to overlay on that music? And then how are you going to scale that as a viable business? And that becomes the challenge.
Jeff, can we talk a little bit more how this seemingly unlimited choice for consumers has translated into the mobile space? And specifically, how is music being impacted by mobile? And how important is location-based devices, and GPS-based components?
Yeah, so I think, mobile has clearly, changed and transformed the streaming music business. I mean, if you look at Pandora as an example, they really took off after their iPhone app was introduced. When you look at all the new streaming music services, mobile is a critical component. We're launching on 2 big mobile platforms. The smartphone has become, the media device of choice. It's capable of playing back music and other streaming media. It's got this always-on connection, which makes it great for overlaying social features to that listening experience, so it's easy to integrate the two. And it's something that the music consumer has with them literally 24/7. So that's the good news. The bad news is there's hundreds of thousands of apps out there. And it's a real challenge to get your app to rise above the clutter. And first and foremost, the user experience is critical. That, if it's no good, it doesn't matter how much money you've raised. It doesn't matter, how good your distribution is and your partnerships are. If the app doesn't work, if it's not good, it's not going to be successful. So it's really important. And as a startup, you've got this yin and yang balance of, when is it good enough to go to market? how long do I have to wait to get it just right? What is perfect? Or is perfect worth waiting for? And these are, they're really challenging issues that you have to face.
I was just going to add one thing to mobile. We made a very important decision up front that mobile is the way to go. So besides streaming music, everybody's on mobile devices, and it could be an iPad or an iPod Nano. It could be any screen size. We need to be able to adapt as a service. So we actually changed our entire backend to HTML5. I'm not sure how many of you know, but it's extremely scalable, and Facebook was doing the same thing, and we ended up, that's why we're pretty much the first music service to go live on their brand new mobile platform. And it's been an amazing experience, getting users' preferences as they're out and about, not expecting them to sit in front of a computer all day, and really giving them the same experience regardless of screen size. It's been an amazing experience for the initial users we have. We're getting great feedback.
The other interesting thing on the music side too is, music consumption, even though mobile could be the driver, and is in many cases, ComScore put out a report 2 weeks ago. They called us digital omnivores, meaning that we consume digital media from a number of devices and move back and forth between those devices. So even if mobile is the driver, when it comes to streaming music, desktop's still very important. People listen at work, and other platforms are important. So when it comes to building your application, it's like, how do you make it work seamlessly across all of those platforms? So we had to work very hard to give you a real-time experience with Mixer Social Radio that's the same whether you're on an Android device, an iPhone device, or your website, and to be able to interact with other users who are on those other devices. So it's not closed on one device.
And as the consumer electronics industry continues to evolve with different platforms and different form factors, we're seeing different behavior, because we power about 300 different businesses, music services around the world, and we're seeing that if you look at PCs or laptops and then mobile smartphones and tablets, that we're seeing different behavior on tablets. And that these seem to be much more of a music consumption and a media consumption tool. And so people are coming back more frequently to the applications that we have out all over the world on tablets. They're buying more music, or they're consuming more music on tablets than they do on smartphones. And it's much more typical of what kind of behavior we see on PCs or laptops.
I think the mobile opportunity is just ridiculously huge. I mean, more so than just the streaming music piece, but more for kind of live events. Think of Instagram for video. You're actually at a Dead concert. You film it, and that streams and broadcasts to whatever, right?
Yeah.
I think it's huge.
Yeah, there's a lot of interplay. The Tiesto concert at the Bowl a few weeks ago.
Oh yeah.
You could just tweet with the right hashtag, and you'd see your face and
Yeah.
your tweet on behind the stage. It was really cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Talk about getting into the show before the show starts.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about some of the different important areas to consider from mobile and others, but let's talk about what it takes as a startup again to get funded. And I'll start with Vicki. Vicki you've talked about 100 startups, you'd said, and you see a lot of innovation, but it ultimately comes down to capacity.
Yeah, I mean, every day, companies pitch to us, and I'm the main gatekeeper here in the U.S. People pitch what kinds of products they want to build with music and how they want to use our platform. And there are certain things that I now know, and I've talked about 100 different startups over the course of 2011. And these range from funded startups to bootstrap to bedroom developers. And, you with music, if you have an idea, that's great. You need a really good idea, you need a good developer, and you need a good concept around that. But you have to be able to think about, what is the user? Just because you can do something and you can build something, why does someone want that? And what are you going to do, to sustain your business over the course of a couple of years? Because music is not a short-term thing. If you're interested in building something around music, whether it's just a simple application or if it's a full-blown business, it takes a while to get something out there in the marketplace, to iterate on it, to figure out how you can sustain the business. Is someone going to pay for it? How are you going to fund this? And if you don't have a big chest of VC money or your own bank account, Is it advertising? Is it subscription? Is it, rev share? What is that? And, there are a lot of companies that have great ideas, but you've got to be able to see it through beyond execution to launch and some sort of sustainability.
I think the funding environment right now it's actually very great. There's a lot of VC money into startups because there's a lot of startups chasing this VC money, right? Groupon just IPO'd yesterday, so there's a lot of enthusiasm now just for internet plays in general. That's where investors could actually make their most returns in the shortest amount of time. With that being said, I would advocate against getting money as far as you can along the process. Like if you can build a product, get it out using viral channels that cost you literally nothing, do that. Stay away from money as long as you can. The reason being is because at the end, you don't want to get diluted unless you need that money. For me and my partner, it was tough to kind of convince us to kind of jump ship, right? Quit to do it. But if I had to look back, I would actually build something while I was at a company and see it go versus securing that first round, then taking a leap of faith.
Seth, you raised some money. You focused on angels. What did it take? What do you think was what was the real succinct reason that you were getting funded?
Yeah, I've stayed away from VC funding. It's a style thing, I think. So to answer your question, what does it take to get a check, right? So if you're a startup and you're not ready for VC, you haven't proved out the concept, you don't have a ton of users.
And you don't have a track record.
You don't have a track record. It's a little more difficult. So if you don't have a track record, you're going to have to show some traction of some kind. Or you got to have people that really believe in you and like, man, this guy kicks ass, he's a hustler. Okay, I think you could scramble this together. Or you just take whatever, 15, 25 grand and like just make it happen with that, right? For us, I have a track record, so that helps. But ultimately what it really comes down to, people cutting a check is, do you solve a problem? Are you showing traction? Do I believe you can do it? And that's really about it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really, it's pretty simple. They kind of, the angel investors, look at what I'm doing and go, one investor invested in us and he said, the only reason I invested in you is because I know you won't let go until it works. So you have persistence. So that was what he was looking for because that was something he had in his career. I've also found that people invest in things that they are, that they align with or synergist or interested in. Mm-hmm. I've talked to angels. We found for us that the right kind of investors are generally guys that have an understanding of either hospitality or real estate because they get what I'm saying. They can draw a parallel, right? So that's been another thing I've noticed has worked.
Well, one thing you didn't say, and maybe Vicki or Jeff, you guys can speak to this, is going after something
Mm-hmm.
and eating your own, as you said, Jeff, dog food before you get in there and try to ask other people to consume it as well. What does that mean exactly?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly, one of the most important things when you're raising money for any business is to have passion, right? To be passionate. One of the famous VCs said, they never bet on the horse, they bet on the jockey, right? They're investing in the people, they're investing in the team as much as, or if more, or perhaps more than the technology or the product itself. So one of the ways to ensure that you're going to be passionate about something is to be creating something that you yourself believe in, that you would use, so that you're not doing it because you see a market opportunity, you're doing it because you have true passion for what it is. Now in the music space, I'd argue that's easier than most businesses because just about everyone can be passionate about music. Everyone here loves music, can find that passion about a music business. So that's great, but it's really critically important to have as much passion and have a great team with passion as it is to have great technology or a great business model.
Well, and also I think with music that, there are companies that want to be everything to everyone. And there honestly are a lot of really big companies that are going to have much deeper pockets to do that. But the startups and the smaller initiatives are the ones that I think are really exciting, are that they're really focused on a particular use case or a particular problem that they want to solve. We've talked to one company that is interested in using our platform, and they're strictly focused on music for exercise and, training and going and having, rhythm and training for running and different kinds of exercise. That's really interesting. There's another company I just did a deal with that's strictly focused on hip-hop. And you would think, hip-hop being, probably the predominant global force in music, but there really hasn't been anyone that's really done that right digitally. And so they're really focused on that. And that's really important because when you think about the pre-digital era of radio and record stores, these were stations and record stores that were focused on a particular consumer, and they had the music that would appeal to that consumer, and they delivered it in a neighborhood and in a channel that those people wanted. That works.
Let's do an audience check. Are there any lingering questions that anyone has? Yes, please.
Real quick, let me get you the mic.
Hi, I'm Trevor Blair. I'm Revolutionary Entertainment. I've certainly thrown a lot of my own money into concerts and festivals. But my question was, do you guys really look at business plans? I mean, is that just an internet scam, or if somebody wants to get money, if we give you a great business plan, will you fund it?
I could probably.
Yeah, go ahead, Sam. You just you've been doing this for a while now.
Yeah, I mean, I've raised a lot of money for a lot of different projects, but music is really no different. I ended up putting together a very detailed projection sheet, essentially a budget for 5 years, and I really mapped out exactly where we might need extra money, where we might need extra support in terms of resources, time, money, people. And I work with the New York Angels in New York. My company was initially based in New York. And the very first comment I got was that, wow, we never get anything this detailed. So we wanted to pay attention to it. And when you do your homework, when you actually put your time and effort into it, it comes across. You're a passionate person. You've done your homework. Your plan is there, and they'll pay attention.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say that, it may seem like it's just rudimentary or going to be tossed aside. And in most cases, a business plan is totally transformed within 30 days of anyone taking a look at it seriously. But their age-old adage is the story about Amazon's founder who traveled cross-country from the East Coast to the West Coast to get funding. And he wrote his plan over that trip at night. Basically, when he wasn't driving, he was writing his plan. And you have to do it just to demonstrate that you're absolutely serious. You have to have it, and it has to be well thought out, and it's just worth it. And it'll help you ultimately.
I think it would actually help big time, just because you can go through the assumptions like, okay, I'm going to make $10 million this year. How does that back into the number of users? How do I get those users? What type of content are they going to be listening to? How do I work those partnerships with third parties, right? So it gets you thinking through the nitty-gritty things that the VC or angel will ask you. How are you going to get these users to hit those numbers? So it's good. It's a great exercise.
Let's take another.
Go
ahead, Vicki.
I also think you need to, at minimum, be able to answer question, what do you want to accomplish? And if you just have an idea that you want to play around with, there's, go to a music hack day and, do that. But what do you want to accomplish? And really think about that. And, for me, a red flag is always if people are like, well, we think we can make a lot of money. It's like, all right, well, why don't you keep working on that and get back to me in 6 months? Because you really need to determine if it's distribution, if it's an idea, if it's a demonstration of a piece of technology, if it's addressing a particular platform, or if it's a style of music.
So
what
the
is
idea is don't make money. That's the trick.
No, money's great, but there's
Yeah,
a lot of
absolutely.
steps.
Make
between-
something
That's
great,
like,
money will come.
By the way, if
exactly.
I could add one interesting thing, in music, it's hard to make money. So when you show the spreadsheets, and I love making money, so here I am showing a spreadsheet that makes like 20%, barely, if at all. That also raised a lot of questions, so you need to be able to know how you're going to address that.
Absolutely.
And that is the good exercise that they're talking about. You need to be able to think through the answers.
Yeah,
So just
great.
real quick, for me, what's worked, just getting in the door, because I need somebody to read my damn plan in the first place, right? So that's the challenge. Because generally, people who get pitched, you get pitched a lot, and so you're filtering through stuff, and depending on how busy you are. So what's worked for me is just a really tight one-pager, really, really tight. And it says everything, what is it? What problem does it solve? Who's my audience? How does it make money? who's the team, and it's in one page, and it's tight, and these guys can read it, and they're like, yeah, not interested, interested. Send me the plan, don't send me the plan. So it's like a romance, from the way I go out and raise money. Is I'm trying to at least see if there's interest, because if they do read the one-pager and then invite me in, then I can give them the more detailed. Throwing details at people who are super busy is like, good luck. It's just not going to happen.
And that's the key too, right? Getting your foot in the door to actually make that pitch. A lot of it is going to be network based, who you know. It's all through intros, right? So through things like this, networking events, that's how you kind of meet different people who you can ultimately pitch to.
And when you get a lot of different pitches for similar things, it's, it's exactly as you say, while people are answering your question, I'm going through my mind this checklist of like, oh, okay, right, okay, I get that, and then you start just organizing and putting people into categories of whether you think they're ready now, or they might be ready in another month, or they need to do, these 3 things, and then absolutely you want to work with them.
So let's take some more, that's great, by the way, more questions from the audience.
Yeah, I've got a couple of, it's fiction and music. There's sound, there's plenty of music opportunities in movies and TV, but in books, this just hasn't happened yet. Even though on the tablets, you just link. It's a hyperlink. If there's a band in there, and you got some original content, you want to hear what the band sounds like, then you can go and buy the record if you want it. Do you know anybody that's doing that? I just haven't been able to find anybody.
You're talking about embedding
Yeah, just a hyperlink.
audio and video in a book?
Yeah, it's like a musical.
I think
You got
there's a
the-
startup called, I believe it's Book Tracks or something like that's doing something very similar, so you might Google that and see what comes up.
There's a couple companies that are doing it.
Who's? Did you say another one? Book Tracks?
I'm not going to name any of the names that I've talked to, but I know there are a couple companies that are trying to figure out, like, what's the right soundtrack for this.
Well, if you like, I do both, a musician and a novelist, and so I want to put my own content together in the same platform. But when you go talk to literary people, they have no idea what you're talking about. When you go talk to music people, they don't get it. So there isn't any. I haven't found anything that links it. And I don't particularly want to start a company, but I hope if somebody wants to do it.
That's a
great.
problem. That's a problem.
So that's the question, right? When you have these new ideas, where do you go? Do you go right to the one-pager? Do you start to look for a team? What do you do?
I mean, I always think for things like that, where you don't want to go to Simon & Schuster and Universal Music to solve that problem. You want to probably go to what's a really good independent and open-minded book publisher and an independent label, and do something small and prove it out and try to get a partnership going with people who are open to experimentation. Because a lot of companies are just absolutely risk averse, especially the big media companies. They're trying to figure out how to keep the revenues flowing in a model that has disintegrated and enter into a new digital age where the revenues that they're getting are a fraction of what they used to get in the physical age. So you find people who are game to explore your idea with you.
Let's try to take one more question. Anybody want to be a taker?
Yes.
My name's Rogan. In different music startups, I see like there's .fm, there's .tv, and there's .com. Is there any preference, or is there like a wave of where that's going? Does that matter for functionality?
Not really, right? Yeah.
No, it's strictly a marketing decision. There've been a number of music services with the .fm. That makes sense. .tv makes sense for video. .com is still the most common thing. And at this point, Google's so good that you don't even need to know a company's URL to find them. So it's really strictly marketing.
That's kind of like the second part of the question is, do you think websites are going to die in the next 5 years and it's all going to go to apps? Or all linked in through like Facebook, kind of like Spotify's doing?
Well, I mean, there's the web app concept, the HTML5 concept I
Yeah.
talked about is literally a web app. It's a link. So
Okay.
we took away the app, we will have an app. We already had an app before, we're just upgrading it right now. But there's no reason why you can't just enter a web address and access it on any mobile device. So why do you need an app?
Yeah, I think there's a misconception out there. I think websites are actually apps, right? Like,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
And so, I mean, what's happening now is everything's moving to the cloud, and so everything is kind of sort of an app already.
And I think apps, I mean, I think that's going to have a limited lifespan, because that was really an interim measure to be able to give a single platform and a single format that many different companies can develop for iOS, essentially, and then that's been replicated. But really, HTML5, once everyone starts working on that, it's going to be more scalable and optimized for, the 5-inch and 7-inch and 9-inch and 10-inch tablets and WebOS and iOS and Android and Bada and all these different operating systems. HTML5 is the most agnostic approach to all of that.
And most apps are using web services behind the scenes anyway. The app itself is a shell. What it really serves is it creates a great user experience, right? Because for the user, it's much easier to go to that phone desktop, so to speak, find the icon for your favorite app, tap it, and you're there. You're in that experience, as opposed to opening up a browser and entering a URL and everything else. So, I mean, that app creates a great front end, even if everything behind the scenes is actually pulling web services.
Or you could bookmark the web app.
The app is basically like a
Experience.
great bookmarker.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
The way, just to add to the HTML5 train, we made a decision about 7 or 8 months ago. We were like, this is all we're built. This is just a web service on a device, really, right? So we just went to HTML5 throughout all. We just said, forget it. This is just one. This is a web page, and exactly, it's about bookmarking a web page that has great UI targeted at a finger. So if you develop that way, I think it creates a lot of freedom, because then you give up this idea like, oh, it's an app. You're like, no, for now, we're all calling it that, and that's what the consumer's experiencing. But I think, everybody on this panel has a really good sense of where the app is going and a web page is going. It's all going to sort of disintegrate into some glorified bookmarking system.
So interesting. Parallels all back to the user experience, and it sounds like it's the same. When I was walking in a panel next door, listening to some of the young musicians, and I listened to hear the young entrepreneurs. It's the same story. Harden your product, harden your song, be passionate, get the right team, get a lot of good people around you, and then go from there. So thank you very much, guys. So let me also take one more moment to thank RightScale, Spark Interactive for the live stream, Jacques Habra, all of our panelists. Thank you very, very much for coming and being part of the event. Next door, there's Jay Sider giving the keynote from Root Music, and I hope you guys stick around. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Keith.
No, thanks.